Hello, let's look at brass articulations and how that all works in SSO. This is something which has changed quite a lot since the original version, because it now includes something called Motif Brass, which really fills in some quite important gaps. Let's just have a look at what we get. One of the most important things with brass is how many players are playing. So in the original SSO, you've got obviously solo players. You have A2, which means 2 players playing at the same time, and you had A6 with the French horns, which means 6 players playing at the same time. Now, the reason this is so important in brass in particular is there is a world of difference as you add more players together. With strings, not so much as you go from sort of 2 to 4 to 8 or whatever. Yes, you can hear the difference, but with brass, it's really transformational, and it's not. It changes the sound in a way. It's not just that it gets bigger and thicker, because brass is one of the hardest instruments, families of instruments to sample, because all those harmonics start fighting each other. And when you're in the room with brass players, it's like lightning going off all over the shop. You know, it sounds extraordinary. And so it does create some acoustic issues when you're trying to sample the thing. So having this new, what Motif Brass has added is A4. In other words, you can now have solo, 2, 4, or 6. Now, if you think about how this works in practice, if you have a, for example, 6-piece brass section, I mean, 6 French horns, okay, which is, you will often have 4 or 6. If you're playing a chord, you don't really necessarily want all 6 playing on each note of that, because what you're going to get when you play a chord sounds nice, but that's the sound of 18 horns, 6, 12, 18. So realistically, you should probably go, if you're playing a triad, you should go for A2. But then when you're playing a lead line, you don't particularly want just 2 players going, because that's not really very powerful. 6 players might be good. But now with Motif, you've got a choice. So you can have A4, which is, and as you notice, the way they program the performance patch in Motif is quite different to the other performance patches. It's designed to be simpler and to lend itself to playing those kind of heroic lead lines without having to faff about with lots of different articulations. And it works for me. So look, you've got one control. Well, you've got dynamics there. So you go. So you still get the legato, and you get those accents. Works well. So it's not just the horns you get that with, though. You also get 3 trumpets, which is so you've got, at the moment in the existing library, you've got solo trumpet or A2, so you've now got A3 as well, because 3 is quite a normal kind of lineup. You've also A6, which is a bit over the top, frankly. Paul, what were you thinking? Trombones again, you've got a solo trombone, tenor trombone, and then A6. So now you've got A5, which is slightly smaller, and bass trombones, you've got solo and you've got 2. Let's just have a look at the actual articulations you get with each of these, because there is a lot going on in, let's look at this one here. Let's take the French horns, for example. Right, I'll turn all these articulations on, some of which I've turned off, so here we go. Right, so obviously you get the longs, which quivering means it's sort of much more brass. So it's brighter and all the rest of it. Stopped is where they stick their hand in the end of the French horn and it gives you a muted effect. Marcato, marked, means it's got a sort of nice strong accent on the front. Tenuto, which is held, but it's a short note, but it's not that. Staccato obviously is properly short. Then you get the trills. You get minor second, which is a semitone. Major second, which is a whole tone. Then you get the multitonguing. This is really useful. So it does the which is really difficult to do using individual samples. Now this is one where you need to use the variation knob, because as you move it, you get different numbers of notes before the accent. Then you got long flutter, which is. So there's lots to get your teeth into there. With the Motif Horns, you get fewer articulations, but you do get the performance thing as well. So long, marcato, tenuto, staccato, staccatissimo, which is actually, I'm not sure we got one of those. Sounds good. Staccato. You see the difference. Quick look at the trumpets. With that throughout the brass, you're going to get a very similar sort of line-up of articulations. Long muted, marcato muted, tenuto muted, so lots of muted. And when they say muted in trumpets, they mean straight mutes rather than harmon mutes. So it's hang on, so it's not as coloured as the harmon mute, but it's very. I mean, I use this sound all the time with real players. What it allows you to do in a real orchestra is using a straight mute. It just makes the trumpets sit into the brass section, because sometimes they can come bang and hit you straight between the eyes, which is a bit much. So when you're looking at, you need to go through each of these sections and line up expectation. What exactly they've got, what articulations you're being offered in these patches, and how that lines up with the real world. And if you're not sure about, for example, cuivre is cuivre, or rips or falls, or any of that stuff, look it up, see if you can find examples of brass players doing it. So the more you understand about how a real player plays the instrument and how they make that sound, the more it's going to help when you come to write your own thing, because it's more than just like a synth patch which sounds nice. You actually understand the physicality of how that player is making the sound work. Okay, so just to finish off here, bass trombone. So most trombone sections, some people have huge trombone sections. I personally tend to have 3 trombones, 2 tenors and a bass, which provides me with the ability to have nice big open voice chords, which I quite like, those sort of things. I really like soft brass. So well down on the... I'm just moving the mod wheel up and down. So that's the bass trombones, which, and obviously you've got a tuba right at the bottom. So look, go and have a play with those. There's a ton of power in there, and you will see how we use it later on in the course. Anyway, enjoy.